Hello, my name is Terry Ashby Scott. Thank you for inviting me today to share my journey with you while living with multiple sclerosis. I live in Spokane, Washington, which is on the west coast of the United States, about 250 miles east of Seattle, Washington. I have had a variety of fields of work, early on as a sales clerk and in a law office, but mostly at universities. My work has been in the field of science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM, supporting high school students, as well as working at the university level, advising students, opening support offices, and developing programs for college students. My last job was as a program director, developing programs for scholarship recipients for a statewide STEM scholarship. I hired and supervised people on my team. My education background includes an undergraduate degree in speech pathology, a master's degree in social work while getting a divorce, which I would definitely not recommend, and a doctorate in education leadership while working full-time, going to school full-time, and as a single parent. My PhD was possible through a scholarship that I received as one of 50 PhD students of color who received the Gates Millennium Scholarship in its inaugural year of 2000. I am currently a single mother with two daughters, 44 and 34, and have 5 little dogs that basically act like children. About 20 years ago, I was involved in a car accident and mentioned this to my doctor about a tingling that I had in my right pinky. He was always very overly cautious and suggested that I have an MRI. I thought it was a bit extreme, but decided to have the MRI. My doctor called me within an hour of the MRI and told me that there were some spots on my brain. After panicking a bit, I asked him what he thought. He said on a continuum, it could be nothing. I told him I liked that. He also told me that it could be ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, which is a quickly progressing disease with no good treatments. I told him I didn't like that. Or he said it could be MS, multiple sclerosis. I told him if I had to have something, that would be okay. I had had a friend who was a successful teacher who lived with MS, but I was shocked. My doctor suggested that I start to see a neurologist for regular checkups and MRIs. After about 4 or 5 years of seeing this doctor, I developed more spots on my brain. And at that point, it was suggested that I find a neurologist that specialized in MS. I found a MS specialist who I currently see in Seattle. I found him through my research skills at an MS center, once again, which is about 250 miles away from where I live in Seattle. I have been seeing him now for about 12 years. In November of 2019, I had just moved into a house that I had built with no stairs. I have balance issues and back and knee issues that affect my mobility from time to time. In January of 2020, I had a severe panic attack. I was having concerns about doing my work. I couldn't do my work. I was having difficulties concentrating, completing tasks. I couldn't understand my own written notes. I was forgetful and extremely and very stressed out. And this was not the way that I had always worked. I had clearly been held positions that I needed all of those skills. I called my neurologist and told him that something was wrong and asked for support to take a leave of absence from work. I even tried a downgraded job from my original job, but I could no longer do that. I left the workforce for further neurological testing. All this happened at the beginning of COVID in 2020. It was a bad year. In the summer of 2020, I was eventually tested by a neuropsychologist, and it was determined that much of my executive functioning skills had been affected due to my MS. His recommendation was for me to retire. So I retired at the age of 59 due to advancing MS. My MS is something you cannot see. I occasionally use a cane to walk, but other than that, there is nothing visible, which is at times can be a blessing and a curse. So what do I do now? I visit with friends. I love to drink tea and I like to eat. I exercise, but not as much as I like to drink tea. I do Pilates. I do yoga. I also do chair Zumba on Zoom through the MS Dream Center in Rhode Island, which is about 2,750 miles away and 2 different time zones away from where I live. And technology has made this possible. I volunteer. I participate on boards of directors for nonprofit organizations, and I'm a commissioner for a state organization that protects the integrity of the judicial process and promotes public confidence in the state of Washington courts. I am also an education mentor. I mentor and speak about continuing education at any age, especially for students of color and women. I also help students with their school essays and help them look for scholarships to attend college. I understand the importance of scholarships, as I would not have been able to pursue my doctorate had I not had a scholarship. And I also volunteer for the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, and I do many things for them. As a peer connections mentor, where I reach out to others who are newly diagnosed and or who live with MS. I've been asked to contact our state and federal legislators to support legislation that impact people with MS. I have served on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee to ensure that all people living with MS are receiving fair and equitable treatment, free of bias and discrimination. And I currently serve on the Community Review of MS Research Committee. It has community members who live with MS, as well as family members impacted by MS. We review plain language descriptions of scientists' research regarding the current funding topic. As a committee member, we share our opinions as to how we feel about the research and whether or not it's valuable to the MS community, and share with researchers any concerns that we have with the research protocol and its impact on community members who would be involved in the research, such as travel distance, number of shots or tests received, especially invasive tests, numbers of visits, compensations, and others. We also talk about the participants' involvements, we also talk about the participants involved that are diverse enough to give information about all groups of people affected with MS. Everything I do in my volunteer capacity is in a group. Everything I do in my volunteer capacity is in a group. In none of the opportunities do I make any decisions on my own. The stakes are too great for me to do so with the limitations of my cognitive abilities. Luckily, I have friends and helpers who can help me. It is sad for me sometimes, but I try very hard for this not to stop me from doing things. But I will admit, sometimes it's depressing, but I cannot stay in that space for very long. I am still contributing and I stay active, and for me, not being active is not an option. I'm retired, but I'm really not retired. MS is a cruel disease. The National Multiple Sclerosis Society is looking at multiple cures to MS because it is a disease that presents itself in so many ways. The society wants to end MS. They want to stop the disease activity, which is and can be vastly different from person to person, reverse the symptoms, allow the person to return to their participation in society, and ultimately stop and end MS. This involves many cures, again, because there are so many symptoms of MS. Why this is important to know, because their work affects me and many people in this room today. And for some, they do not even know yet that they may have MS. Sometimes you cannot see MS. Like for me, it is hard for people to see me when I tell them that I have MS because I look no different than anyone else. But there are lots of things that are happening behind the scenes in my body that have totally impacted my life. Remember, I had to quit work because I could no longer do my job, or even a lesser job. The work that the National Multiple Sclerosis Society is doing now will impact how this disease impacts us in the future and how we can live our best lives. I have seen this, for example, just in medications alone. When I was first diagnosed, I used to have to take shots, which I had to self-inject, which I absolutely hated. But now I take pills. Others get infusions. There are so many more medication options now than when I was newly diagnosed. Whether you live with MS, love and/or care for someone with MS, or are a supporter of someone with MS, be sure to work with your local MS society to help find a cure for this disease. I believe in the work of the National Multiple Sclerosis Society is doing, and I hope that you do as well. We can end MS. Please support this work. Thank you.